With the release of Dark Souls Remastered, we got a ton of newcomers that haven't played the original Dark Souls game before, and I'm almost certain that the first thing that they have noticed when it comes to PvP is the prevalence of backstabs. In Dark Souls Remastered, or well, in Dark Souls 1, we have a ton of different backstabs. Sideways, upside down, crazy mumbo jumbo, voodoo backstabs, all sorts of backstab flavors. But the one that newcomers get the most is the salty flavor, and I can't blame them. The game is very tough and frustrating with all the sheer amount of tech associated with backstabs. So you get veterans backstabbing and chain stabbing newcomers left and right, which is very frustrating. However, I don't want you to hate on the mechanic, don't do that. Backstabs are fun and they add real depth to the PvP element of the game. What I want you to do instead is to learn how to counter and execute all these fancy backstabs, which is the purpose of this video. So welcome to everything you need to know about backstabs in Dark Souls Remastered. Short disclaimer, beware that just like it is with every other everything you need to know video on the internet, this video won't really cover everything that you need to know about backstabs, but it will cover the acceptable minimum of things that you need to know in order to make your PvP experience bearable and, well, fun. So today we will break down the most commonly used types of backstabs, and I will show you how to counter them. Let's start with the simplest group, lock-on backstabs. Those backstabs utilize lock-on camera shenanigans to get your or your opponent's back, and the most notable example would be Strafe backstab. And as you could have guessed, it is executed by, well, strafing. The way it works is that when you are both locked onto each other, your movement gets limited, and holding the stick to the left or right puts your character in this strafing situation. Once you get close to the opponent, you can strafe behind their back regardless of what they're doing and land a backstab. Needless to say, this backstab method is terrible because it is very well telegraphed and is super unsafe. Most of the time you'll see someone with a huge ass weapon, fat roll and shield strafing around you looking to score a backstab, and most likely they're going for the strafe backstab. How do you counter it? Well, you just start to backpedal. Hold back and boom, the geometry of angles. They'll never get behind your back if you move backwards. However, moving forward is very dangerous, unless you know the trick. The actual reason why this backstab is terrible is because it is super easy to punish with a backstab of your own. So not only you can easily avoid it, you can also try to punish it with a backstab of your own. All you have to do is just strafe in the opposite direction and use their strafe momentum to get to their back first. Another viable counter to strafe backstab is the kick. Yep, just the regular kick. The best part about it is that it actually combos with some weapons and spells. So not only it is a safe keep out, it is also a medium reward option, which is pretty cool. So if you see someone do suspicious strafe with the shield up, kick him, try to backpedal or just strafe in the opposite direction and look for that backstab punish. Now, let's talk about the run stab. Again, run backstab utilizes the same principle of abusing lock-on to get the right angle for the backstab, but the way you execute it is a bit different. Basically, whenever you lock on to someone, the camera does everything in its power to keep you on them. So if you say sprint past them, the camera will quickly snap to your opponent, leaving their back exposed. So you just dash into your opponent until you pass them and then boom, the camera automatically snaps and gives you their back. And even though it is still very easy to punish, it has a merit to it. You can use your opponent's momentum to get the camera snap. So if you're getting chased by a bunch of gankers, the moment they start to sprint, just lock onto them and wait for collision to occur. Once it happens, boom, you get the backstab. Again, to counter it, you can just either hold back or alternatively, once you spot the dash, just stand still and use their momentum to outstrafe them and punish it with a backstab. Pretty cool stuff. Pivot backstabs are crucial, and it's the first legit backstab method in our list. For the most part, pivot stabs abuse the fact that Dark Souls has very chunky hitboxes. So as the name suggests, you approach the opponent at an odd angle and then you pivot. You snap the stick, your character snaps as well, and boom, you get their back. Keep in mind that in order to get to your opponent's side, you have to unlock, since locking on will make the camera track your opponent, centering your virtual crosshair. It also does require a certain degree of precision when it comes to execution, because the pivot has to be very quick and sharp. Otherwise, you'll get the running attack or just a regular R1. How do you deal with it? Well, you protect your back and sides. Again, just backpedal. You can tell it's a bit of a recurring theme here, because backpedaling solves almost every possible problem, whereas moving sideways or even worse forwards leaves you wide open for a potential stab. And now it's time for the superstar, the number 69, the roll backstab. As the name suggests, roll backstabs utilize rolls to close the distance. However, it is super important to understand that in most cases, roll stabs are a punish, meaning that they are not avoidable. Take a look at this example. My opponent swings a two-handed ultra great sword that has very slow R1s, so I can react to it by rolling behind him and scoring a backstab. Outside of very few weird and inconsistent gimmicks, you can't do anything about this. It's a legitimate punish. So if you get roll stabbed after whiffing a slow attack, then the only solution to the problem is to just not whiff any slow attacks. However, some people get really thirsty and try to get roll backstab regardless of what you're doing. It is pretty much a normal backstab, so it works with everything, walk, magic, running, whatever. The only trick is that it uses the roll to close the distance, so some of these thirsty PvP guru wannabes will do an empty forward roll, trying to bait you into doing something so they can get a backstab. However, this kind of stuff is very easy to counter. You see them roll forward, just strafe, and you'll get a backstab. Again, it is based on the same principle. You're using the lock-on to get the right angle, and then you use their forward momentum to score the punish. Alternatively, you can just backpedal and be safe. Now keep in mind that there are various rolls in Dark Souls 1 and, well, Remastered, so depending on what type of roll they do to close the distance, the punishment might be different. But so far what I've explained covers the most common and generic type of roll, the regular roll. I'll make a separate video talking about all the weird rolls in Dark Souls Remastered later on, so stay tuned for that. At this point, we have covered pretty much every common type of backstab, with the exception of the cancerous Poise backstab. But it's not really a separate type of backstab. Poise backstabs rely on Poise to trade whatever you or they do in favor of a backstab. You can do roll backstab or pivot backstab by abusing your Poise stack, making it technically a Poise backstab. So be aware of what your opponent is wearing and how much Poise damage you can dish with your setup, because if you're not careful, you are inviting your opponent to Poise stab you to death, which is not fun. So, the actual difference between all the stabs that we have covered today is just how you break the gap to your opponent and how you get to their back. Whether you abuse the lock-on camera shenanigans or use roll to position yourself, at the end of the day all of them are backstabs and they all have one common counter, the damage. Thanks to the wonderful Japanese spaghetti code, if you take any damage during the backstab animation, the game will automatically cancel the backstab. You will get an empty backstab animation, but it will do no damage. So the ultimate counter to backstabs is just attacking, and it can be any attack, even if it's 1 damage. If your opponent takes any damage during the animation, the backstab will get cancelled and you will break free. God bless the Armor of Thorns, because with a simple roll you can cancel any backstab with ease. Ever wondered why every good dueling setup has Fire Surge equipped? Well, obviously to finish people off with a chip damage, but it also dubs as a great anti-backstab tool. Fire Surge does small amounts of damage but in a rapid succession of ticks, which makes it pretty effective for when it comes to cancelling backstabs. But wait, there is more. Backstabs can actually cancel backstabs, if that makes any sense. So if your opponent is trying to strafe stab you, you can basically option select the whole thing by strafing in the opposite direction and trying to punish them with a backstab. Best case, you get the backstab punish. Worst case, 2 backstabs cancel each other out and you are safe. So, today we covered all the most basic, most common, most important and least cool types of backstabs. And the idea here is that if you just want to be safe, if you don't want to be fancy trying to punish any of these stabs with your own stab, you can just backpedal. Holding back protects you from all kinds of backstabs, and it is as safe as it gets. However, if you want to get more, if you want to punish them scrubs for attempting to go for a shitty strafe stab against you, refer to this video and the counters that I have presented and you should be good. If you have any questions regarding backstabs and how they work, ask away, I'll do my best to help you. As I've said it earlier, backstabs in Dark Souls 1 and, well, Remaster are pretty complex on a mechanical level and it's a very big and serious topic. So consider this video as a first part of how to backstab serious. Later on, I will do a whole separate video on chain backstabs and how to avoid them. And the third video will probably cover ODTs and some situational tech, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.